British world champions Gavin Rees, Junior Witter and Clinton Woods. Let's have a look then what's in store for them. You've got some promising news on Junior Witter.
Yeah, it looks as though they're very forward, shall we say, in negotiations with the nephew of Bernard Hopkins, Demetrius Hopkins, for Junior's defence of the WBC light welterweight title, and that could happen on March the 22nd in Atlantic City. It's a fight that Hopkins wants, it's a fight that Witter wants, and now it's a case of going to the TV companies in the United States who have also expressed an interest, and so it could be Witter against Hopkins, March 22nd, Atlantic City.
Well, what do you think of that one?
I like that. I'll tell you why I like that one, because Hopkins got a bit of a reputation there. He's fought in Atlantic City an awful lot because his uncle Bernard happens to be the promoter there, along with Golden Boy on that coast. And what I also like about this is it's close enough to New York, and there's a big fighter in New York. He's not the most exciting fighter in the world. He's not the second coming of Rocky Marciano, called Paulie Malignaggi, the IBF champion, and he's the one that we think Ricky's got out the corner of his eye, but we know that Mick Hennessy and Junior Witter, that's the one they're looking for. That's a massive, and I mean a massive, New York fight. And that's why I think the Hopkins fight makes cash sense and makes boxing sense.
Yeah, and I know from one of the key members of Ricky Hatton's camp, who was in Atlantic City last week to watch Malignaggi's last fight, where he scraped through to defend the title against Herman and Guju. And apparently the Malignaggi team are all over Hatton and his camp. They are desperate for that fight to happen.
That's interesting too. Okay, Steve, what's happened to Clinton Woods?
Clinton Woods, well, we're hoping that Clinton Woods comes out in about March on Satanta. He hasn't boxed for a while. Couple of Australians being mentioned. One's Paul Briggs and one's Anthony Mundine. And if Mundine sounds familiar, it's because he's been a WBA or WBC super middleweight world champion in the past. He was a top rugby league player and turned his back on rugby league to become a boxer. His father was a good boxer in the 70s. He's done some good damage. That's a fight that's been mentioned, but I've got to tell you, Mundine's also lined up for another fight, so I'm not sure Mundine happened. The Paul Briggs fight, if it happens here, it's a fight that possibly would work better in Australia, but I can't see Clinton travelling there. Bit frustrating, Clinton Woods, to me. I mean, fantastic kid, deserves better recognition, deserves more money, deserves bigger fights, and he's been in this waiting game for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah,
it's a bit sad.
And so many times he's had to go over
Just
the same ground against Jason
mate.
Delisle and Glenn Johnson, and just when you're wanting him to push
Gonzalez.
on, and I know that the Clinton Woods versus Joe Calzaghe fight was very, very close to being done for March the 8th, which has now been filled by Hay against Macaronelli. It was all but done.
That fight was booked, and I'm talking about booked, about 48 hours after Joe Calzaghe beat Kessler in November, Mark. That fight, I swear, was as good as done and dusted. The O2 was booked, March 8, Bosch. Clinton Woods was excited. Joe was excited enough because he likes Clinton. He wanted Clinton to get a few quid. Plus, Joe wanted the IBF light heavyweight title.
Do you know what's fascinating about that for me is that Joe's price for that fight was very similar for his price to beat Bernard Hopkins. I'm surprised, actually, that he's such a strong favourite. I know they're talking about Hopkins as being an old man, but if you think back, you know, we were talking right at the start of the show about what Ricky Hatton was saying to Joe about, you've got to get here, Joe, you've got to see your name up in lights. But what Hatton has said repeatedly is that he needed 3 fights in the States to really get used to the conditions there, to whether the weather, the jet lag, the time differences, whatever, just boxing away from home and a long way from home. I mean, I know Joe's boxed in Germany and won well in Germany, but this is very, very different, and it's a big fight first.
It's funny you say that, sorry, Mike. It's funny you say that, because Enzo Calzaghe was talking to me at the Enzo Macaronelli David Haye conference on Monday, Mike, and he was saying to me, Steve, when Ricky goes to Vegas, where does he stay? You know, what does he do? Where does it? And I said he stays in a really nice house, and he's away from everything, and he's at the strip. How long does he go for? And I said, well, 3 weeks would be ideal. And does he train when he gets there? I said, no, he has a couple of days to acclimatise and relaxes. And you could see little Enzo, he's a sharp man, sort of taking it down in his head. So I think that fight is getting closer and closer, judging by Enzo's travel plans.
Gavin Rees, if I mention him, another one from Enzo Calzaghe's stable. What is his
I mean, really, he was the
look like?
surprise story of 2007, winning the world title by beating Suleiman and Bailly. He's got the WBA version of the light welterweight title, so how strong is that 10-stone division in this country at the moment? But he's got that defence, which was earmarked initially to be on that undercard of Matt Skelton against Ruslan Chagayev in Dusseldorf in Germany next week. That's now been moved, and Frank Warren was telling me today it's likely to take place at the Cardiff International Arena sometime in March, and that's a defence against Andreas Kotelnik.
Yeah, I think that's better for him to go there, to be honest with you, because Kotelnik tough fighter, very technical fighter. Plus, I think he's with Hans-Peter Cole. That's a Peter Cole sort of co-promotion. So I think getting that out, getting it down there to Cardiff. And he's an interesting kid, Rees. He can raise his game. I'd like to see him at home rather than having to go out in Germany against the Ukrainian Mike.
Well, we've got 5 minutes or so to go. Not long. I mean, just looking at the year to come, of course, we can't talk about a year of boxing like this without talking about the Olympics, the GB squad. Well, it looks like being, what, the strongest ever, do you think?
The strongest since qualification was introduced in 1992. In 1996 we had 2 boxers. They both lost first time out, and one of them was only there by default. Fola Okisola only got there because the Danish guy pulled out. And in 2000 we had 2 boxers. We had Courtney Fry, he lost straight away, and Audley went on first gold in 32 years. And we only had 1 boxer, and we had nearly 40 boxers from the British Isles try, not including the Republic of Ireland, 40 from the British Isles try to get to Athens, and only Amir got there. At the moment we're sitting on 4 boxers, and there were 2 qualification tournaments to come, one in Pescara, Italy in February, and the final one in late April in Athens. And I've got to be honest with you, and we're not being after timers here, both Mike and I have said this, I think we could have 8 British boxers at the Olympics, and I think which would be fantastic, because it's 8 boxers with a chance. Not like when you could send 12 or send 11. This is 8 boxers who have had to fight tooth and nail, fight their way to get there.
That's the key, because just to get to the Olympics in this current system, and the one that's been in place since 1992, which was actually made more stringent after 1992.
Absolutely, yeah.
So since 1996, really. So for 4 of them already to have qualified, and the difference that will make. Amir Khan was talking this week about how he would love to have had a teammate, just one teammate, to have been there with him in Athens. And I mean, a lot will depend again on the draw. It's a random draw. It's not seeded in any way. I mean, you know, I don't want to dilute what Amir did in Athens. It was fantastic at the age of 17. But if you flip his draw upside down, and he's drawn against Mario Kindelan in his first bout, then he wouldn't have been the sensation. He would have improved as a professional. He wouldn't have lost any of his ability. But imagine what that's done for his confidence and just generally for his personality. So it does depend on the draw. We've got, you know, at the top of the pile, we haven't mentioned his name yet, but Frankie Gavin, who won the World Championship in Chicago on the night that Joe Kawasaki beat Mikhail Kessler. You know, he will go there as favourite. But also, I think Amir made another important point this week that, look, it was fantastic that he won the World Championship, and we can't change our tune now, because we did say beforehand that the World Championships, because of the sheer number of fighters that go there, can be more difficult.
6 fights, 10 days.
But there is an element for everybody, and it's the same in the other sport I cover, athletics, that there's a difference between the World Championships and the Olympic Games.
Okay, let's just finish with a few questions for you both. If there was one fight that you could see this year, what would it be, made or unmade?
It will be Floyd Mayweather against Miguel Cotto, to decide, for me, the best welterweight in the world.
I can't believe you've stolen my thunder. You knew I was going to say that fight. You know what I'm looking forward to? Alex Arthur, Scott Harrison. Interesting fight. Yeah. Alex Arthur, is about to become the WBO full super featherweight champion. He's coming back, Scott Harrison, after a very troubled 2 years. That's a massive, monstrous fight for Glasgow. And bear in mind, the last big fight in Scotland between 2 Scots took place in front of about 900 people when Jim Watt and Ken Buchanan fought for the British title. Amazing. No women, and just British, just diners. Do you remember? Yeah. I think it's the biggest fight. Would it be the biggest fight in Scottish, all Scottish fight in Scottish history, Mike? Probably.
Don't know.
Right, what about a fighter off the radar?
Well, I've mentioned this man before, but he's still going strong and still unbeaten. And he came from the Olympics in Athens, as did Amir Khan. He's at a similar stage of progress. His name's Vanez Martirosyan. He's an Armenian who boxed for the USA at the Olympic Games, went out in the early stages to a very good opponent. And as I say, he's unbeaten in 18 fights at a very similar stage of his development to Amir Khan. And like Amir, this will be a pivotal year for him. By the end of this year, we'll know whether he's going to be something special or somebody who flattered to deceive. But Vanez Martirosyan, he's out of the wild card gym, trained by Freddie Roach in the States. He's got good guidance and a great management team behind him, so I'm expecting to see him break through. I'm not sure he'll be the most exciting fighter you've ever seen, but he's good.
I like Tony Salim. He's a young kid who came over to England from Nigeria boxed for England and was promised all sorts of stuff about going to the Olympics and Olympic qualifiers. Never got it. He's a light heavyweight. He's 7 unbeaten at the moment. He fights Courtney Thry, who I mentioned earlier on, lost in the Olympics in 2000. Very good fight at the first of February York. But I tell you, the big guy out there to watch in the heavyweight division that is chaotic, and Matt Skelton could beat Rustam Chagiev, the Uzbekistani, next week. I think so. Oh, because they're both short. Or shortish. They're both lumps, and they both move slower than concrete. Anything can happen in a fight like that where no one's special. But there's a guy called Alex Povetkin. He won the gold medal in Athens. He's only had 14 fights, but he has taken care of some very, very big names, some very big unbeaten fighters. Alexander Povetkin. He's my overseas fighter for the year.
That's Steve Barnes, and that's Mike Costello. The next boxing on 5 Live.